How are some of the world's most influential women leading the charge for gender equality? Melinda Gates, Gillard and Winnie Byanyima joined the stream live from the Women Deliver Conference in Vancouver, Canada. I'm Malika Bilal. Today we'll discuss their leadership, their careers, and the importance of mentorship. Have questions? Tweet me at AJStream. Women Deliver, the world's largest conference on gender equality and the health, rights, and well-being of girls and women, is expected to bring more than 6,000 participants together from more than 160 countries. The conference kicked off in Vancouver, Canada, with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sharing some opening remarks.
Individuals and interest groups are trying to roll back women's rights, and politicians are giving in to the pressure, shamefully campaigning to undo women's hard-won victories. That's a daunting reality to face, but my friends, we are not powerless. It's up to us to fight back. Women, men, and gender-diverse people, allies, neighbors, and communities, all of us standing together, all of us standing strong.
We're thrilled to have with us three powerhouse women leading the charge for gender equality from the Women Deliver Conference. Melinda Gates is co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She's also author of The Moment of Lift: How Empowering Women Changes the World. Winnie Byanyima is the executive director of Oxfam International. She is a leader on women's rights, democratic governance, and peace building. She's served 11 years in the Ugandan Parliament, at the African Union Commission, and as Director of Gender and Development at the United Nations Development Programme. And Gillard, who served as Australia's Prime Minister from 2010 until 2013, and is currently board chair at Global Partnership for Education and the chair at the Global Institute for Women's Leadership at King's College in London. Welcome to the program, everyone. I'm so excited to have this chat with you today, and so is our audience. So we got so many comments and questions from people online who are young female leaders themselves. I want to dive right in, starting with a tweet we got from someone named Ahyamya. She says, I joined youth leadership in my country, and one of the most devastating challenges that I face was that the electorate expected money, and that there were powerful men interested who asked for sexual favors in turn for financial support. I refused and I lost. She goes on to say, I lost the election, but not my integrity. From that, I learned that there is a price for ambition, and as a young person, if that price involves your integrity, it is too high of a price to pay. I'm now offering leadership in other ways, like mentorship. She goes on to say subsequently in another tweet, Winnie, that you are her role model. So I'm going to direct this one to you. When it comes to there being a price to pay that involves your integrity, has that happened to you in your life? And what would you tell someone like Ahyamya?
Thank you, Malika. Yes, it's happened to me. I grew up in Uganda, like Ahyamya, at a time of conflict. I grew up seeing the worst excesses of a dictator, Idi Amin, killing people, rape of women, kidnappings, and so on. But one thing I learned from my parents was, this is not normal. Say no, resist, stand up for your rights, but be safe, don't get killed, but don't surrender your rights. And I didn't. There was a price. I fled my country. I became a refugee. But I channeled that anger that I had against injustice into movements, human rights movements. I joined others who were fighting against colonialism, against apartheid, women's rights organizations, and became an activist, a serious activist, learning to organize with other people to create the world I believe in. That's what I say to Ahyamya. Join others, join a movement, youth organization, women's rights organizations, and fight for the world you want. You can't do it alone. Join others. Stand up for what is right.
Melinda, I can see you nodding there. How has your own personal trajectory led you to where you are?
Well, I've been lucky enough to be co-founder of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and I've been traveling for 20 years. And I think one of the things that has shocked me as I've been on the ground in so many different countries in Africa and all over the world is that abuse comes up more and more and more. That if you have a conversation with women that's a real conversation, say you're there to talk about their health or their children, if you stay long enough, they'll tell you about the abuse in their community. And what I know is that abuse silences women and girls, and it's unacceptable. So I completely agree. You have to stand in your own authority, stand in your integrity, and we all have to fight back. And it takes finding other like-minded women, just like Winnie said, and like she's turned her life into being an activist. And it takes other male allies too. There are men who are for women. It takes all of us standing up and saying, not okay.
We got this tweet from Titus, and we didn't get a lot of tweets like this, but I think it's important to show and to share because views like this are everywhere. So Titus says, men and women are not equal. The world's crazy. We should stop deceiving ourselves. The way that I treat my male pals isn't the same way that I treat my female pals. God created women differently with different abilities. And though I believe that a person should be respected independent of gender, of course, he still holds that view. Winnie, have you encountered this type of thinking, and what do you do about it?
Yes, I've encountered it. It's wrong. It's nonsense. Difference and equality should not be confused. Men and women are different, but men and women should be equal. The fact that they are not doesn't make it right. We work to achieve an equal world, and my God, we've made a lot of progress. The entire 20th century was a progress towards more equality between men and women. I'm not living the life of my grandmother, who at the beginning of this century was married off at 14 to a polygamous man, inherited as a widow at 24. That can't happen to me. 100 years later, women have won more rights for me. So we are on a journey. Titus, wake up. Equality is a goal, is a principle signed on by all governments at the United Nations, and we are marching towards it. The fact that it isn't there now doesn't make it right. And the fact that we are different, men and women, doesn't mean we can't be equal. We are equal.
So Titus, if you're watching, Winnie says you are wrong and asks you to wake up. Now, Melinda, you often speak of how your personal life impacts the way you take on issues. And so I want to share a clip with our audience. It's a humorous, it's a tongue-in-cheek clip, but it's an excerpt from your book, which is fabulous. I finished it just yesterday, right before the show, right on time. And you talk a lot about gender equality, and some of it is just the little things that make it necessary for other people to see the way that they can change in their own lives. So I want to share with you a clip from your appearance on My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman. Have a listen.
Our oldest daughter, Jen, we have 3 children, she was about to go to preschool. And Bill and I completely agreed where we wanted her to go for preschool through 5th grade. This one school was not close to our house. We were really wrestling with this. And he finally said, Melinda, I get it. I will drive 2 days a week. And so he started doing it. And he loved the conversations with her in the car, et cetera, et cetera. About 2 or 3 weeks into the school year, a couple of moms kind of sidled up to me and they said, do you see what's going on here in the classroom? And I said, well, it's funny, I see more dads driving. And they all said, well, we went home and said to our husbands, if Bill Gates can drive his kid, so can you.
I'm sure your husband must love that moment. But how does that apply then to the work you do? How does what you're doing in the home take on a wider scale?
Well, we have to look at all of this unpaid labor that women do all over the world, and our economies are built on the back of that unpaid labor. And so whether it's caregiving or chores, some of the caregiving we want to do, we want to care for our loved ones, but a lot of what we do in our homes is chores. In the developing world, it's carrying water, it's working in the field, it's cooking for hours a day. In places like the United States and Canada, we cook, we do laundry. So nowhere in the world do men and women do an equal amount of unpaid labor. In fact, that gap equals 7 years of a woman's life. And so what I was trying to talk about there was a difficult conversation Bill and I had in our own home, because this is personal. We have to take it, we have to look at it in our homes, We have to look at it in our workplaces, and we have to look at it in our community. We do more unpaid labor everywhere, and that needs to change.
Mm-hmm. And I see you nodding there, Winnie.
Of course, and it can change. But like Melinda says, it starts at the personal level in the household, agreeing to share that caring work more fairly between a man, a woman, and their children. But there's also a role for governments. Governments have an important role to provide the services that can liberate a woman from drudgery so that she can work and earn money, so that she can be a leader in society. Governments have an important role, especially in the provision of public services, water, energy, education, child transport. The most important one actually is childcare, essential childcare. But the private sector also has a role to play. So if we all play our roles and are able to free women from the drudgery, then women can be part of the economy and live better lives and be part of public service, contributing as leaders.
And picking up on what you're saying, of course, to play our role, we need environments that are conducive to that. So we got a video comment, and I'll direct this to you, Melinda, because she does. Her name is Meher Manzoor. She's a PhD candidate at Tulane University, and here's what she's asking.
Hi, my name is Meher Manzoor, and I'm a Fulbright scholar from Pakistan. I love reading the book by Melinda Gates, The Moment of Lift. You in your book mention how certain workplaces have hostile cultures that keep women out, and how at times women hold themselves back. And we know we cannot fix women to fit into systems that are created and designed by men. So with global health workforce comprising mostly of women, how can we create gender transformative health systems and organizations that lift women up and close the gender gaps? Thank you.
It's a big question, Melinda, but part of your life's work.
Yes, and I think Meher asks a fabulous question, which is how do we make sure we have full equality in the workforce? And that is, you first have to have transparency. You have to actually know what your workforce looks like. You have to publish what your workforce looks like at all levels. You have to publish transparency on pay, because you have to have equal pay. And then you have to make sure that men and women have an equal voice at the table. And so I don't care whether that's in the technology sector or that's in the health sector, we have to make sure that we're moving forward all roles, not just for men, but for women too. And today we don't have enough role models, and we don't have enough transparency of what's going on in industry by industry, because only with that transparency and that data can we then actually make commitments and decide we're going to move forward differently as a society, no matter where we are in the world.
So when it comes to role models, Julia, we're bringing you in on the phone where the connection's a little bit better and stronger. We got this comment for you on Twitter. This is Dr. Rhonda, and she says that you were one of the greatest female MPs. She says, what kept you so strong in the face of the horrendous misogyny you experienced whilst Prime Minister? And so for our audience that is not familiar with some of the vitriol that you did face, I want to share with them a clip. Now, this is from several years ago, of course, but in it shows just a taste of some of the things that you had to go through. This is you in an infamous speech now in Parliament in 2012, addressing the misogyny of one of your colleagues. Now, for those of you who may not remember the moment, here's the clip.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. I will not. And the government will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny by this man. Not now, not ever. The Leader of the Opposition says that people who hold sexist views and who are misogynists are not appropriate for high office. Well, I hope the Leader of the Opposition has got a piece of paper and he is writing out his resignation. Because if he wants to know what misogyny looks like in modern Australia, he doesn't need a motion in the House of Representatives. He needs a mirror. That's what he needs.
Julia, power suit, powerful words. So Rhonda on Twitter is saying, what kept you so strong? How did you keep going?
Thank you for the question, and I guess I'd say three quick things kept me going. Of course, the support of family and friends and good colleagues matters to everything. Beyond that, I think it's very important to be clear about what your sense of purpose is. What enables you to keep going even when the going is tough is to know exactly what it is that you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. I went so far as to write down on a sheet of paper what I wanted to be the purpose of the government that I led, and on the toughest of days I'd get that increasingly crumpled piece of paper out of the bottom of my handbag and read it again, and it did steady me. And thirdly, I think it's really important to nurture a sense of self. Of course, we should all be open to the constructive criticism of those we interact with and who care about us and who want us to be an even better version of ourselves. But there's so much toxicity out there on social media, in the traditional media, and I think it's very important for women to nurture a sense of self so you're not hostage to all of that. You're not feeling bad about yourself on a day of bad social media posts or bad headlines if you're in the public square.
Mm. And because of the things that you worked on, we got this tweet, a follow-up from Dr. Rhonda, who says, within a hung parliament, Julia Gillard delivered more legislation than any previous. She disrupted the power disparity in disability services and launched a royal commission into child abuse that revealed the truth about institutional abuse. So just listing off some of your accomplishments there. But I wanted to move on to this tweet we got from someone who asks a more direct question. They say they want you to talk about female education, empowerment programs, because many females around the world, especially in Western, Eastern Africa, they say, are illiterate. Most of the females are usually denied human rights. So that's the wording of this tweet here. But talk about education, because I know that that is your mission right now.
Right now, and sorry for the wild waving around at this end. We've just had a few technical problems, but I think we're up and running. I have the great honour of chairing the Global Partnership for Education, and so we're about educating boys and girls, but when we look who in our world is most likely to miss out on schooling now, it is girls. We want to make sure that every child gets a great education, and special measures have to be engaged in to reach the poorest and most marginalised girls. But we know from the 67 countries we work in, we can make a difference. We've seen lifts in primary school completion rates. Now in secondary school, we've seen lifts in quality. Things like school feeding programs can make a big difference, attracting girls to school, their families being prepared to send them. Having female teachers makes a difference. Having basic things like sanitary facilities.
Looks like we might have just lost the connection again with Julia Gillard, but we will work to get it back. She's coming to us from Vancouver, so we're going to hope that that gets a little stronger in the next couple minutes. But I want to pivot here to this tweet from Mariam Dahir. She says, I joined the leadership in health system in my country, but I was the first in my area. No woman inspired my journey and supported me. I wish that I could find them. I'm still struggling by my own in a male-dominated field. So Mariam is a doctor, and she sent us a video comment and is directing it to you, Winnie. So have a listen to this comment now. Unfortunately, the audio quality was not the best, so we had to voice over her comment, but here's what she says.
I started my journey.
I started my journey in advocacy. When I was going to the level of leadership and going to the decision-making positions, I couldn't find any women who were ahead of me. So the main question is, why don't we have role models? Why don't we have networks that support young junior leaders who are coming up and wanting to change? As well, why aren't we supporting each other as women?
Wanted to change, as well as why we are not supporting each other as a woman.
So she's asking for support. Winnie.
Mariam, I can see that you're a young woman with agency. You're a doctor. I presume you're a medical doctor. You say that you have been a first several times. I connect with that. I was a first a couple of times, but I don't actually ever talk about being first. Because I think being first itself speaks a sad story that no other women have had the chance to be there. Not because they didn't have the ability, but they lacked opportunity to break a barrier. So you have the agency. You do it. You build a network. You bring other women around you, and you offer to support others. That's the way it works. If you were to sit and wait to see others in order for change to happen, no change would happen. Rosa Scott, who sat in that bus and sparked the civil rights movement, didn't wait for another woman to get on that bus first. She did it. Okay? You've been a first. You can do more first for women by bringing them around yourself and offering to mentor those with less opportunity than you. That's the way I see it.
So when you speak of lacking opportunities and lacking agency, although that video commenter did not, we got another comment from someone, and she says there is one field in particular, and in her eyes, it's the field of philanthropy that is lacking, and it's lacking in diversity in several ways. So this is Melody's song. She's the founder of Diversity Chair Association for Fundraising Professionals in Calgary, in Canada, and here's the comment she sent to stream.
I'm Melody Song. I'm leading the diversity initiative for the Association for Fundraising Professionals in Calgary, Canada. Charities are in dire need of diversity as our practices are designed around white, male philanthropists, and that needs to change. But donors are more often fixated on making sure that the fund goes to the cause, not the organization. This creates a scarcity mindset in the charitable sector that prevents us from investing in people, diversity, and sustainability. How do you think we can change that so that charities can be more like certified B corporations with sound business practices to ensure greater impact?
I'll give this one to you first, Melinda.
Can I jump in there?
I knew you would want to. I knew you would want to. Who wants to take it first? Winnie, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Winnie.
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Winnie.
Thank you, Melinda. I am angry at that. You're so right that in our sector, a sector that's values-driven, that you still see fewer women in leadership than men. What example are we setting? I sit in many meetings where we are 2 or 3 women and everybody else is some old, white man leading a global organization. That's not right. It needs to change, and we need to set some targets for ourselves. We also need people to hold us accountable on inclusion. There are no people with disabilities leading mainstream movements, people of gender diversity leading in our organizations, not really. So we need to challenge ourselves. The things we tell other people to do, we must do ourselves. I agree.
Melinda?
Yes, I agree with Winnie. And in fact, this is one of the issues that we're looking at the foundation very closely, and we're not doing a good enough job yet. So we're on what we call a learning journey, but I will tell you some places we're making progress and other platforms we're trying to make sure we have diversity at the table. So we just had our annual trustees meeting. There were 4 women in the meeting and 2 men. When we sit around and do strategy reviews, the people speaking at the table, when we're talking about our India strategy for maternal and child health, there are far more Indians at the table than there are Americans or other nationalities. When we're talking about our African work these days, we have far more Africans from different countries, because obviously Africa is a huge continent with lots of diversity of talent and ideas. So we're trying to hold ourselves accountable. What we're also trying to do is create platforms for not just diversity and gender, but for youth. So one of the things that the foundation's done in the last few years is created this group called the Gold Keepers, which we're trying to track and measure the SDGs that the United Nations set, but have the youth leadership show up from different countries to say, where is activism making a difference? Where are movements making a difference? What issues are we not looking at and not seeing as a world that need to be brought to the global stage? So I think we need to do it, as Winnie says, basically at all levels and hold ourselves accountable.
I see where the passion is, and I am so sorry then to have to pause this conversation. This conversation, of course, will continue online at #AJStream because there is so much to talk about. That's all the time we have for now. Melinda Gates, Julia Gillard, and Winnie Byanyima, thank you so much for joining the stream today. We are at the end of the program, but until next time, we'll see you online.